So this is the TUI. You've already seen it in various versions over, I think this is probably the third community call that it's been shown on. It's still experimental, probably won't be for much longer. And there will actually be another UI that I'll be showing later. But for now, since we haven't really done a new update on this UI formally in a demo, I thought I'd go over some of the new features that have landed in it. So here I'm just showing a typical Dagger pipeline. Here's the code for it. We just run test and build in parallel. This is all pretty pedestrian code. It's just a little Go repository. Run test with Ginkgo, run Go build, and here it is running. So all the pipelines are grouped in sort of a tree view. Here's the smoke test thing that we ran, and here we can see that the tests failed. So if you actually want to go down and scroll around, you tab over and scrolling, home, page up, page down, everything should work. Getting all the colors and everything to work down here is actually a whole adventure. You literally have to re-implement a terminal because there's no way to just like print these directly. It'll really mess with the whole terminal UI. So lots of challenges there. But one extra feature baked in is if you look down here in this possibly hard to read text where it says open logs in editor, if you want to capture these and look at them separately, you can just press O and it'll open it in Vim. Then you can save these logs somewhere. That's helpful if you've like ran tests and like a flake happened and you've been hunting for this flake for years, but like now it's in a terminal UI. Now you can actually open it in an editor and save it. If you go to a tree entry, like a not a leaf node, I forget what the word is, but something that has children, you can press O on that too, and you'll get a directory with the entire tree saved into like a whole file and directory hierarchy with all the logs. I happen to be picking everything that has no logs, but here we go. So I think that's most of it for this UI. I'll run it again since it just ran kind of quickly. You can see all the spinners and everything, all that good stuff. There's a bunch of keys down there. Press question mark to see the legend. It'll show everything. For example, you can collapse everything and expand everything. So I think I'll move from here to showing a different style UI that I've been messing with. One thing I'm not a huge fan of with this kind of flow, and these are really just like different things you're optimizing for. This interactive UI is great for when you want to just like, you're close to maybe committing and you want to run everything and just go over all the output. But what it's not great at right now is when you quit out, it's just an empty terminal. We might change that to have it just print out all the things. But there's one other thing I've been messing around with, which is if you set this variable to inline instead of 1, and then let me tweak this variable over here so we can bust some caches and actually run some things. This will do a git log graph style UI instead. So it won't pop you into like a thing that takes over the whole screen. Instead, everything will be in the scroll back, and you'll see all this nitty gritty details about like, each of these blocks is a vertex, which is like a node or a step in the graph. It's like a command that you're running or an image that you're resolving. The gray text is an output of a vertex that's being passed along to something else. So here you can see we run the pull, and then that gets used later by this APK add build base. Overall, it can be like a lot of information to take in, but the thing I like about it is it leaves you in the terminal, so you can just see the scroll back here, move around like normal. I can go over here and like fix the thing that I broke and run it again, and hopefully this all passes. So yeah, this is more optimized for like the rapid feedback loop of just staying in the terminal and trying to go into code and fixing it and popping back out and just repeat running it over and over and over. Now I'll try to show something a lot more complicated. This is a test suite for a side project of mine. This involves doing Docker builds. Here, I think we're seeing something that we need to fix in BuildKit. But you'll see a bunch of image builds happen. You'll see this import line. Actually, hang on, I didn't even run this with the right thing, sorry. Need to Dagger run that. That was actually not even using Dagger. So disregard all that. Any brokenness here was not Dagger's fault. So yeah, now we're uploading doing some preparation, doing a lot of things. Let's see what happened back here. We ran a Docker build. You can kind of follow this line down and see the Docker build led to all these other commands running. Now we're doing an import. Now the import is done, but it's just kind of sitting there. So you might be wondering what it's actually running. So one extra little feature is you can pass debug. And now not only will you see all the commands and things that are running, I'll give it a moment. It's probably loading up some code. Now you'll see all the API calls that are being made to Dagger and how long they take. So once we get back to that stuck part, now we can see we're actually running an import. This is currently a pretty slow Dagger API call because it has to do some things like outside of BuildKit. Right now, up until this point, we've been relying purely on BuildKit's progress stream. So anything that happens outside of BuildKit, we just had no way to represent. Now we can actually show a progress entry for whatever we want. So the thing I did was added a debug flag. So that'll tell it every API call will actually create a vertex and we can start logging to those things. But most importantly, it's just nice to see what exactly is happening and maybe find any inefficiencies, like maybe you're calling a bunch of redundant, like one thing I noticed in Base, which uses Dagger internally, was I was making a lot of redundant calls, like setting up the same temp mount point over and over and over. So I was able to move all those to like a lower common level. Looks like this is going. And here also you can see we're importing again. So I have a PR to possibly cache container imports because right now it just repeats that step every time you use it. So it kind of punishes you for not using a registry. So that might be a fix that hopefully lands in the future too. Now we're running BuildKit as a service in BuildKit because these tests run against BuildKit. So soon you should see both of these logs moving really quickly as all the tests run. And meanwhile, I guess I'll scroll around and just show some paths. Let's see, what is feeding into APK add? So I'm going to bet that this is a vertex called creating Dagger metadata because that's common to every single command. And my computer is really struggling, I think, to screen share and also render all this. This is all like pretty young code. I haven't really optimized much yet, so not too shocked. Also, we have gigantic strings being printed all over the place because container IDs just like grow pretty big. Okay, looks like everything finished. I'll try to breeze along a bit. I don't want to, we have a lot of things to cover today.
Everyone's really excited, Alex, so you're doing great.
Good to hear. Maybe I'll just keep throwing more and more complicated things at it. So here's a repo that we use for testing a lot of concurrent pipelines running in the Dagger Cloud UI. Oops, sorry, spoiler. And it's kind of, one interesting thing that comes out of this is that you can see the level of parallelism that happens. It's kind of inflated by having nested groups because that's really what adds all the lines. But as things finish, you'll see them kind of taper off and then you'll note that this one took longer than everything else. And I guess for my final trick, I'll try to run Dagger's own tests using this. And it gets pretty crazy. So this is running our basically all of our tests. So our Node SDK tests, Python SDK tests, the engine tests, Go tests. I think that's probably Go SDK tests, Dev Engine. There's a lot of things going on here, I think, because we didn't really have a visualization tool like this. One thing I noticed, for example, is if you're using pipelines a lot and you're nesting images beneath them, you'll end up with a lot of these redundant groups. So that led me to thinking about how code should be organized that uses pipelines.